Welcome to SVG-TV News for Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. 3 communities which are prone to natural disasters will benefit from a community resilience building project through the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Red Cross Society. The project has started with training of 3 local Red Cross volunteers who will work with the communities in addressing issues of child protection, gender-based violence, and gender inequalities. Larissa Puggs the Kid tells us more in this report.
Bookament, Paget Farm in Bequia, and Magum in Overland are the 3 communities chosen to benefit from the 2-year program by the SVG Red Cross under the Communities Resilient Project. These communities have been directly impacted by disasters linked to climate change. Today at a press conference, stakeholders and other participating organizations were informed of the project, which has been funded by the Canadian Red Cross and Global Affairs Canada. Project coordinator Dasima Hamilton provided an overview.
The business of dengue that will have impacted one of our communities. Recently there were some rains and all 3 of the communities were impacted. So it is for them to be able to help themselves rather than always having somebody to come in and give them a hand. So we're going to be organizing training and we're going to be helping them to focus on what their critical needs are. If they're able to identify that, I believe we are going to look to see how we could provide the necessary resources.
Hamilton said they would like to see more men participating in the project.
If we focus specifically on women, we realize we are going to miss the boat. A lot of our young boys and our men really need to have a helping hand and build their own personal capacities so that they could be very helpful in building our community and its resilience.
At today's session, environmentalist Dr. Ronald Murray lauded the Red Cross for initiating such a project, noting that climate change is a serious problem which has to be addressed, especially in the communities prone to disaster. He said that disaster risk reduction has to become a culture for every Vincentian.
It must be part of our day-to-day activities. And we speak of that. If you go to St. Kitts, you will realize that they don't only prepare for hurricane between July and September, but they're prepared for hurricane all year round, and it's all across the country. It has become part of their cultural development. So I'm saying to us that if we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are serious and we are going to respond to climate change and to the consequences, it must be part of our program of life. It must be involved in our agriculture, in our development, and all the structures that we develop.
Director of NEMO Michelle Forbes noted that the SVG Red Cross is a part of the National Emergency Task Force, and with this new project, it will strengthen the existing programs in disaster-prone communities.
Sit down as a city out and think, okay, if nothing is happening emergency-wise or natural hazard-wise, that you're not going to get involved in any activity. Each community is unique and each community has its challenge, so you can get involved in different activities.
Regional project coordinator and disaster risk reduction experts also made presentations via Zoom. They said that the idea is to build communities which would be able to return to their former state after any disaster. Suriname and Belize are also part of the Community Resilient Building Project, which has been funded to the tune of more than $4 million. For SVG-TV News, Larissa Puggs the Kid.
Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves observed the 85th anniversary of the anti-colonial uprising of October 21st, 1935 by educating the community college students on the history of George McIntosh and origins and unfoldings of the social democratic revolution in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In a lecture held yesterday at the community college, the Prime Minister said that leading up to the anti-colonial uprising in 1935, the living conditions of people in SVG were horrible.
The world depression of 1929 to 31 had made its adverse effects seriously felt. The export prices of local produce and the volume of exports dropped considerably. Unemployment, already widespread, was reportedly on the rise. Housing conditions of the mass of the population were deplorable, and wages were very low. 1 shilling, 24 cents per day for men, and 10 pence, 20 cents for women. All this and more were reported by Major Ord Brown in his colonial report entitled Labor Conditions in the West Indies.
He then explained how George McIntosh tried to help the people by challenging a bill through the writing of a petition, which was denied. However, the people took to the streets in protests throughout the country, which resulted in the arrest of McIntosh.
And they went into the courthouse yard, the protesters. They mash up, they overturn vehicles. They want many vehicles, but they overturn vehicles. They mash up the windows, glass windows for the courthouse. But a month with a number of women, with some men, went to the prisons, overpowered the prison wardens, took away the keys.
The Prime Minister added that following the 1935 uprising, the people faces several consequences.
Essentially a martyr. And between 1936, as a consequence of the 1935 uprising, there were some ameliorative measures taken for the working people. One of them was the liberalization of the Constitution to allow representatives from the working people to go to the Parliament, to go to the Legislative Council. And McIntosh served on the Legislative Council from 1936 to 1951. He was also on the tongue board and was chairman of the tongue board for a long time. And McIntosh was the darling of the working people. And he fought for land reform, deepening democracy, improvement in the lives of the people. That's why we are talking about the social democratic origins in 1935.
PM Gonzalez distributed 3 of his books to the college students and encouraged them to read more about their history. Military parade as part of activities to mark this country's anniversary of independence will be held next Tuesday, October 27th at the Victoria Park. However, there will be a strict adherence to COVID-19 protocols. A release from the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force states that spectators are strongly advised to comply with the protocols by wearing a face mask. Temperature checks and hand sanitizers will be done at their entrance to the park. The military parade, which will begin at 8 a.m., will be the command of Superintendent of Police Timothy Hazelwood with Assistant Superintendent of Police David Trumpet as parade adjutant. There will be no uptown salute. The theme for this year's independence celebration is "With Strength, Honor, and Dignity, we stand resolute at 41 and beyond." There is an apparent increasing trend of travelers to this country not wanting to adhere to the established COVID-19 protocols and are requesting exemptions from presenting the required negative PCR result and or quarantining in an approved hotel for 5 days. And the Health Services Subcommittee of the National Emergency Committee, the Coronavirus Task Force, noting this disturbing and increasing development, pointed out in a release today that locals are colluding with these travelers in seeking to float the protocols. The Health Services Subcommittee said it is therefore reminding the public that the strict compliance with the protocols for travelers to SVG has served this country well so far, and there is no evidence of local or community spread of COVID-19, and no exemptions will be granted regarding the requirement for travelers to arrive with a negative PCR result not older than 5 days. Where required, additionally, no exemptions will be granted to 5-day mandatory quarantine in a Tourism Authority Ministry of Health approved hotel. Further, that travelers from high-risk countries will not be allowed to quarantine in their homes, and the typical quarantine period of 14 days will be enforced. The Health Subcommittee pointed out that early detection and isolation of positive cases has prevented infection of other persons locally, and these capacities are particularly vital in view of the rapidly rising numbers of infections in the USA, the UK, Canada, and some regional countries. Persons are warned that any breaches of the quarantine orders as issued will be referred for prosecution. So far, 2 persons have been taken to court and convicted for breaching the COVID-19 protocols. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force is appealing to citizens to cease and desist from acts of violence and or intimidation during and leading up to the November 5th general elections. A release issued yesterday by the Police Commissioner Colin John also strongly advises the political parties to adhere to the spirit and letter of the Elections Code of Conduct, which they signed a week ago. The Commissioner says they have received reports of several acts of violence, damage to property, defacing of buildings and roads, and noted specific incidents including the pulling down of a billboard and posters in Camden Park and other areas, throwing of missiles and firing of gunshots in Rillan Hill. The leaders of both political parties yesterday publicly condemned these acts of violence and appealed for civility. The police are also calling on the leadership of all political parties to apply to the Office of the Commissioner of Police for permission in relation to the holding of political rallies, meetings, whistle stops and limes in a timely manner so that the necessary security arrangements can be put in place to safeguard members of the public. Noting that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is known for holding free, fair and peaceful elections, the police is further calling on all nationals to exercise wisdom, decorum, tolerance, self-respect and respect for the views of others so as to ensure tranquility and an atmosphere of peace and stability during these national elections. Further, the Commissioner has given the assurance that the members of the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force and its auxiliary force will exercise all of the powers vested in them according to law to maintain law and order, preserve the public peace, protect life and property, and ensure that these elections are held in a civil and peaceful atmosphere. And the NDP candidate for Central Kingstown, Sinclair Leacock, said no matter who is in office, there should be a constituency fund for elected parliamentarians to serve their respective constituencies. Speaking at a meeting at Lago Hyde last night, Leacock said an NDP government will ensure this happens because the people deserve such support.
When I see the people, especially the young people, who line up behind the Unity Labour Party, my heart aches, it burns, because they don't love you. The poorer a person is, the more likely you'll see in the house, asks Ralph, because they're depending upon a handout. You know, some picking, you get them something so that to hold on to him. This is not a handout party, you know. This is a hand up party. We pull you up. We show you a lifeline so you too can make something of yourself.
Noting that he and the NDP team will continue to fight to protect democracy at SVG, Leacock said the people are too divided and unity is needed to uplift the country.
We must not have a red party, a Labour police, an NDP North, a Labour shop, an NDP funeral, a this, that, and everything is divided. We must be a one nation, one people, one Vinci. And in the new Democratic Party, led by Dr. Friday, I am satisfied in my heart of hearts that we have that plan to create more jobs, to create more opportunity, to put more money in your pocket, to give you a greater sense of independence, a greater sense of self-respect.
Meanwhile, the NDP's candidate for West Kingstown, Daniel Cummins, who also spoke at last evening's meeting, again called on the Dr. Ralph Gonsalves-led administration to release the findings of the last poverty assessment report, which he said shows an alarming rate of poverty in the country.
These people have brought the population of this country into the mud. They have deprived us of a way of living that we used to know even under our Labour and under Sir James Mitchell. The poor have become desperate. You have a few days to tell the people, one, what the poverty report says, and two, why you bury it. When I gave you that report, all you can put all your hand on all your head, and all you can bawl. You listen to me. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you know me. My word is my bond. You know, when I tell you I can do something, I can do it.
The Unity Labour Party's candidate for South Leeward, Minerva Glasgow, said she has a 9-page plan for the constituency with programs to be carried out in every village. Speaking on Star FM's Street Beat program yesterday, Dr. Glasgow said these plans are outlined under broad headings such as tourism, agriculture, education, sports and culture, and infrastructure development.
And then, of course, I drilled it down to say, okay, well, we are going to put like at the hardcourt of Kettles, Health, the Cameron Park Centre, Health Centre, which is currently under repairs, and we really want to see the end result of that. Then the refurbishment of the community centre in Retreat, that is almost finished. Then we have one of the big plans, and we really hope that Mr. Bernard Punnett will be convinced that he should either sell that place or make it available for lease or rent, because that old sugar mill that he has in the background, somebody said that they want to put a restaurant there and put the mill in the background.
Nice. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have that fisheries complex in Cleveland. We really want to see that complex finished.
Noting that she is very concerned about the poor and marginalized, Dr. Glasgow said the ULP administration has done a lot for the people of SVG, including those in South Leeward. She said the upcoming general elections is an important one, and the people, particularly the youth, must exercise their right to vote.
Because, as I said last night, it's a choice between progress and stagnation. And that's why I tell them, when I go to the homes and they say, oh, we're not voting, I say, listen to me. If you don't vote, it is to your disadvantage, your detriment. So they will vote, the young people in particular, because, as I said, everybody now has a chance to access universal education, including university education. Those are the opportunities that are available for the young people. So to go and vote, particularly, as I said last night, they're trying to go to imperialist China. They're going to lose all the scholarships and so that we get for Taiwan, and they can't afford that. So I use those things when I go to campaign and tell them, you know, this is what I stand to lose.
The ULP candidate also used the opportunity to outline her plans for sustainable jobs for the people of South Leeward.
Well, you know, government has the SET and the YES program.
Yes.
But remember we spoke about the potential from Sandals. When that hotel gets going on this side, many young persons will be engaged there. And I remember I said before, I told you about the self-employed program. So when they get into agriculture and all of that, then because I said to them, yes, you can even start a backyard garden and sell your lettuce and those things. So we also have the YES program, where we call it Seeds of Hope, where we encourage them to get involved in plumbing and those things, and they can make a living for themselves. So it's not a case to say you put your hand up in the air and say that you can't get jobs. You can be self-employed, and there are tremendous gains. I mean, because some people don't like to work with others, so you're your own boss basically. And I see many of the persons in South Leeward being employed when that program gets going.